Thank you, Dean. You were easier on me than I thought you were going to be. If you know anything about him, he doesn't let anything lie, believe me. But I would like to, first of all, congratulate all of the other inductees here, especially the 57 soccer team. Makes me not the oldest person here. So, I'm glad you guys are here. But, Beth, I also need my Cheetos, so I'll do that. So, and you know, I have some things to say, but listening to Beth up here, putting the Mrs. K shirt up here, and talking about Vinny, you know, those were great people. And Mrs. K, Betty's the one that hired me, you know, so she's dear to my heart. When you went into her office, was she in there smoking cigarettes? Absolutely. Go like this, whatchamacallit. Right? Yes, that's true. So, but no, Betty was great. So, I knew I always wanted to be a teacher and a coach. It just took me a little while to get there. As I was attending Cape Cod Community College, trying to resurrect an academic career that had gone awry for a few years, I begged my high school hockey coach to let me be a volunteer with him, and he accepted me. And that was my first introduction into that. Through some great connections that he had, he called up to Keene State, which is, once I got back on track, which is where I went to school and graduated, and they hired me as the assistant soccer coach, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. When I graduated from Keene, I graduated with a pregnant wife, a 2-year-old son, and no job. That was good thinking, huh? So I was fortunate enough to get a job teaching and coaching in Leominster, but I knew in my heart I wanted to coach in college. So I coached in Leominster for, I think, 6 or 7 years when the soccer job here opened up. And that, again, that's back when Dean and I coached against each other in high school. And I always won, didn't I?
Yeah. You were loaded.
Yeah. So the job opened up, and I came over, and Betty hired me, and I've been here ever since. That started a 34-year association with the Fitchburg State Athletic Department. We had some great teams. Dean mentioned our record that we had. We were very fortunate to be fairly successful. We just had a great group of, I'm trying to think who used the word blue collar. Chris, did you? We had a bunch of blue collar kids that just worked hard, loved playing, had a good time, and I think most of them all graduated too. But I still have relationships with those kids today. And they were just great kids. And to go to the NCAAs twice and be in the ECAC 3 times was just a great. I was coaching hockey at my son's high school. He graduated, and Dean came to me and said, hey, Chris graduated. I need an assistant. Why don't you come on? And I jumped at it. It worked out very well. And I think I did that for a year or two. Shortly after that, I had an opportunity to go to WPI to become the head soccer coach there. I did accept that job with one caveat. Because, again, I was teaching in Leominster, these were part-time jobs. I said to the athletic director, I will take the job, but I'm going to keep my other jobs. I'm going to continue as the assistant hockey coach at Fitchburg State. And he agreed and said, fine. And I said, okay, I'll do it. If he said, no, we don't think you can do that, he would have had me back up here with both sports. But I ended up going down there, and it worked out very well. But sometimes it got hard, and believe me, I have to thank Dean for all he's done for me. My wife would say the same thing. There were times I would teach school, leave Leominster, come over, have hockey practice from 3:40 to 5 o'clock, get in my car and drive to Worcester and have soccer practice under the lights at 6 o'clock down in Worcester. And for a couple of weeks each year, that was pretty hectic. But, you know, again, we made it work, right? So, and obviously, I've been part of the hockey program for 27 years. It was almost like a marriage, I think. But we, you know, as a head coach, I knew that it was his team. We would talk, we'd argue, we'd go back and forth, but in the end, I knew it was his team, and you know, what we agreed and what he came up with, I knew enough, like even in the marriage, I don't win the fights either. So, you know, I'm really, was really honored to be part of that. And as Dean said, I'm not going to go through the numbers, although I wrote them down. You stole my thunder on that. But I was part of he's had over, are you 600 yet? No. He's got over 500 wins, and I was part of almost 400 of them. So, you know, that's quite an honor for him. I can honestly say all the kids we had here, whether they were our soccer kids or our hockey kids, were just a great group of guys that really worked hard and had a lot of passion for what they did. And to this day, I have relationships with kids on my first team. I think was the 83 or 84 fall, I believe it was, and I still see some of those kids, you know. And so it's great to have that relationship. Also, the relationship that you make with the coaches, and most of them are here today, and I'm so glad they're here. Vinny, Chris Kine, Tom, you know, that's one of the things I miss the most about not coaching, is missing the relationship and the camaraderie with these guys, and I miss the guys too. So, one of the hardest things I ever did was to take the WPI job and have to leave here. It was very hard. As I look back, without going into a long story, I don't think I handled it very well, but it's one regret that I have. But it happened in the summertime, so I never really got to face-to-face talk with the team. So that really kind of bothered me. But, you know, that was one of the hardest times I ever had, was trying to make that decision. So, with that, there are some people I need to thank for being up here. As everybody said, they thank all the people. Certainly, as I said, the assistant coaches, the players, things like that, the staff. You know, someone mentioned Dottie. She was the best, wasn't she? And you know, Dottie, you know, the staff, the facilities people, the people that work in the office, and the trainers and things like that. Speaking of the trainers, I do need to mention someone. Rebecca, you worked with our kids for the 17 years I was here, and I think you did a great job with them. Rebecca's spot on the bench was down the defensive end, and we'd be down there together quite a bit, whatever rink we were at, because that's where she was on the bench in case someone was injured and she needed to see him. So we spent a lot of time there, and she was great with our kids. And I watch the last day when we have senior night, and she takes pictures of them and she gives them out at the banquet, and I see how the kids react to you. And so thank you for everything you've done with the team. Remember that first year?
Yeah, pretty well. Scared the hell out of me.
I should. Rebecca was a new trainer, and we were having renovations done in the locker room and the coach's office and her office, and we had some lockers in there. And I'm not quite sure, did that fall on me or something? Or
somehow it got across the room. Somehow.
Yeah, and she thinks that I got mad and slammed the locker and threw it across the room.
Maybe.
I don't know if that's true. And by the way, Dean, I did hurt my shoulder on that time. I threw the stick into the stands. And today, it's still sore. But lastly, the kids. I miss the kids some guys here, I'm telling you, it's hard to see, but I miss being around you guys. And lastly, I need to thank my family. Obviously, my kids, Chris and Jennifer, obviously they couldn't be here right this minute. They have kids of their own running around in soccer and hockey games and things like that. So, but they put up with a lot. I was gone a lot. As you know, as Chris talked about, recruiting, on the road, scouting, you know, it takes up a lot of time, and you're gone a lot. And so they had to deal with a lot. And obviously, the most important person of that group is my wife Sandy, who's been with me for 47 years. And I think I've been coaching 46 now. So this year I didn't coach. So she did a lot of driving the kids around to practices and dance lessons and figure skating lessons when I was off coaching. And she did the bulk of the work. She had her own job to take care of, and you know, I couldn't have done it without her. It's just great support from her. She was with me when, like I said, I was at Keene State, being an assistant coach, and we had a 2-year-old, I think, and you know, so she's been there all along for me. So I really can't thank her enough for all the support that she's been for me. And then obviously Dean. He said it all before, and I just want to echo it. We worked together. We've known each other for almost 40 years, but we worked together for the last 27, and I couldn't have asked for a better friend. And boy, I'll tell you, it was exciting to be part of it. I loved it. That's why it's the last thing I gave up. I gave up. I retired from teaching. I retired from soccer, and the last thing I had to hold on to was the hockey, and it was the hardest thing I had to give up. And I just want to thank Dean for all his support that he's been over the years with me doing 2 sports and things like that, and most importantly for his friendship. I mean, we have become very close friends, and even though we were coaching partners, we've become very close friends. As I mentioned, the day I left to go to WPI was one of the hardest days. The second hardest day was when I decided, and I knew it was time to retire, but was when I decided to retire. That was a hard day too, and I just said, it's time to do it, and I did. But I tell you what, I did miss it. Now that we're fortunate enough to have the games on the computers, I'm sitting at the house down in Eastham, not East Hampton. So, Barnstable, right? Yeah. So I'm sitting down there with the computer going, and Sandy's going, "What are you doing? Watching a hockey game?" Yep. I've got the Fitchburg State games going on, and you know, so it gives me an opportunity to at least watch the kids play. And I was so proud of all these guys for finally winning the conference championship and going to the NCAAs this year. I couldn't have been prouder. I will tell you, I was a little jealous that I missed out on it. They waited for the old guy to retire. Right? So, but I was so proud of all of them. It was a great night in Fitchburg State athletics. So I'm very proud. In closing, I want to thank the university for this great honor. Very proud of it. Very proud of the people I've worked with and all the guys I've coached. And I'll tell you, it's been 34 years of a lot of people, you know, and I've made some great friendships and relationships. So thank you very much, and congratulations to everybody. The X is on the floor. All right. Thank you very much.
A lot of gear. Coach, congratulations.